whenever you are, Mr. Beatty.
Okay, thank you. Let's just do a quick roll call. Beatty, I'm here. Sieber,
Present.
I see your lovely face. Shepler, she here?
No,
No? Okay. Jack Diamond,
Present.
thank you, Jack. Dennis Dickinson,
I don't see him.
okay. Edna,
Here.
hey, thank you, Edna. And Matt Simpson. Matt?
He's on Zoom. He may just be away from his computer right now.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we do have a quorum, I appreciate it. Let's approve the minutes of the prior meeting. All in favor of that? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, okay. Really, we're getting, Ryan Moore was a driving factor in a lot of this, as we're going forward to, in some serious uncharted waters. Every dollar, every nickel, every dime, although was always important, will be even more so going forward, anticipating some significant state cutbacks, and so forth. Should be a leak. I bet.
Sorry, I was a little distracted in my office here. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. So going forward, shared services can be a vital part in this whole process of maybe having some mergers or consolidations. I can tell you I was on the Queensbury School Board when we went and did some significant consolidations. And as everybody knows, your school tax is your highest tax bill. And we were able to do it through attrition. We didn't lay off anyone, but we did, when you have a significant amount of employees, sometimes you can merge departments or agencies together, and through attrition, there can be savings. So today, I sent, everybody should have the agenda, which is, it's going to be a discussion just today alone. And I'm going to let Ryan Moore kind of lead this discussion. He's put together a number of things that he believes deserve a discussion and about the mergers and merging and consolidation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ryan. So Ryan, you want to jump in?
Good morning. Thanks, Doug. If I can just jump right down, if I may, to Jay, because we have a couple economic development agencies on the call right now, and they have a busy day ahead of them today as we prepare for phase one. In terms of merging outside economic development related entities together, doing a physical merger in terms of the organizations themselves and trying to see if it makes better sense to unite them as one. That's a longer term project. That's going to require a whole lot of discussion and buy-in and legal considerations. But just in the same spirit as amortizing our pension expenses is on the table, I would say this has got to be on the table. It doesn't mean that it's ultimately something that will be done. It could be something that's done, at a minimal capacity, but it should be part of the conversation. I'm not eager to amortize pensions at all. In fact, I hope we never do that. But because it's an option that's available, it should be discussed. The same with a formal merger of economic development entities. We got a lot of entities in this county that all do a great job and have been doing an excellent job in helping us right now. They've all been great partners. ARCC, for example, yesterday you saw what they were able to do in terms of getting our metrics and our data squared away so that we can reopen. Thanks to Mike Biddle for his efforts on that. But the spirit of this is really the report that got put out last week, the Warren County Partnership for Recovery. Everybody's driving in the same direction. We all grabbed an oar and we're all rowing the same way. It's really nice to see everybody's working very well together. And at a very minimum, that's what we want to get out of this, is for that spirit to continue far beyond the coronavirus recovery, so that we can all sit around the same table and make sure that we're working together and not at odds. It's not to say that we are typically at odds, just to say that there's always room for improvement. And I've seen a whole lot of improvement as we've responded to this crisis, and we want that to continue. So, further in the weeds on that, we can sit down with all of the entities over time and figure out what makes sense. But if I may, if I could go back to the county departments, as Doug said, this is not about layoffs. If it's really about, let me back up to something that the vice chair of this committee, Supervisor Seaver, talked about, and that's carrying forward lessons that we've all learned from the coronavirus. And I did take good notes as to the pieces that she did. Carla, I think you need to mute. Everybody hear me again?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
So Rachel talked about the technology improvements that we've made. She talked about the public communication improvements, the service delivery improvements that we've made out of necessity, any outsourcing that we've entertained. All of these are really good things to think about. The one that I think applies the most to this particular exercise is an opportunity for reflection. And we'd ask that all the departments, not just the ones that are on the agenda today, think about what are the tasks that you're not performing right now as a result of the pandemic that you're most thankful that you're not having to perform, and what does it say about those tasks? To me, it says there's probably room for improvement on how to accomplish those tasks, because we're not really doing anything around here that doesn't need to be done. If there's something that's unnecessarily painful, that could be an opportunity for collaboration across county agencies to do that in a better and more satisfying and more efficient fashion. High burden, low reward items are the types of things we're talking about. So that's the mentality that we want to have going into an exercise about mergers and things. We're talking not just about mergers between county departments, but if you look at your internal structure as to how your department is structured, who's doing what are your internal silos, if you will, and what might make sense to reorganize. If you can shuffle things around and you need less personnel, again, the idea is not to let anybody go that's been doing a good job. If we do reduce the size of the county workforce, the preferred option would be to do that through attrition. When somebody's ready to retire, we merge duties, shuffle things around, and maybe we fill one less spot if we can do it. Skipping down into, and the intent of this is to help the departments. The intent of it is not to do any damage. It's not to fix anything that's not already broken. It's to try to help, to look at these things in a different way. And I think maybe the best example of that on the list, and if Denise is on the call and she disagrees, she can disagree with me. But if you look down at item H, merging veteran services into social services, Denise and Cindy, they're a two-person show. Both of them do an excellent job dealing with the clients. I never hear enough praise for both of them from veterans to the extent that veterans talk to me about their experience with that office. Perhaps, I don't know that this is true or that it's not true, but perhaps there's an opportunity to have Denise and Cindy devote more of their time during the day to those direct interactions with veterans, and maybe ease the administrative burden on them so that they're not having to do as much work in the financial system or process the papers that are involved in the processes that we do here at the county. Maybe they don't have to spend so much time developing agendas for committee meetings if we were able to roll those functions into a department like social services that has more proficiency only because they do it more often. So that's the type of thing I'm thinking about. How can we take a new look at departmental functions in a way that helps the departments? If we were to do that particular item, that quote unquote merger, if you will, I still consider Denise the Veteran Services Department head. It's just that, perhaps she'd be leaning more into social services that has a more robust administrative function to handle some of the things that could be handled and free her and Cindy up to do more with veterans. All of the items on this list that are on the agenda, with the exception of one, that's mental health and public health. I've never personally experienced that type of a merger in operation in a county and working out in a county. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's the one that I've never seen done before. All the others I've seen done. I know that at least in theory they can work. Whether or not they can work here in Warren County depends on all of us sitting down and looking at it honestly and making that determination. Maybe some of these things don't, and maybe they do. Or maybe it doesn't ultimately result in two departments being formally merged into one, but it results in perhaps sharing of the workload in a way that makes everybody's lives a little easier and allows us to perform our functions better. So that's I think where all of our heads need to be at on this thing. Not about anybody losing their department head status. I think we've got excellent department heads. That goes for everybody. And we have excellent staff backing them up. I think that the best way to do this would be to, for Tammy, maybe next week, depending on people's schedules. I know my schedule this week is pretty horrendous. So maybe we start to just have some breakout sessions, spend a half hour here, an hour there to get everybody rolling on this. For example, we could take code enforcement and public works and weights and measures, and we can have a discussion there. We can take Office for the Aging, social services, veterans, and we could have a discussion on that. And we can keep, without necessarily making any big moves right now, but just to get everybody thinking. There's other, I mean, as I said, there's some things on this list that to me seem like lower hanging fruit than other things. Good example is weights and measures into public works. That's on the list, but I really don't know whether that's going to add any value, because weights and measures is Jeff, and Herb is there on a temporary basis helping Jeff learn the ropes. Merging a one-man show into another department, and I'm not really sure that at the end of the day does anything. And if it doesn't do anything, it's nothing that we would do. But perhaps down the road, when Herb is fully retired and there does become a need, we're hoping that the economy here is going to grow. If there does become a need for some part-time help for Jeff, then perhaps that is an instance where it would make sense to draw from DPW to help meet that need. So that rather than hiring a new part-time position, maybe we can lean on somebody that's already in DPW that's riding around in a truck. Again, I don't know whether we'll actually ultimately do any of these things, but I do think that they deserve a discussion.
So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the committee for any thoughts or discussion on what County Administrator Moore just laid out. Ms. Sieber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ryan, I appreciate that overview and part of the discussions we've been having for a while now. But I think over the years, we have talked about different departments where we could find some savings and also be able to see a streamlined of services as well. I don't know, if it's worth trying to put out, a different survey to department heads or take some type of a temperature on ideas that employees may have. I mean, certainly the employees in each department are going to have the best ideas on how they can capture that cost savings, or perhaps what could be rolled into a different department. I'm not sure, but maybe that's something we could look at. I know I've got a list of ideas I'll forward on as well, but I think it's a discussion, that's really good to start having. And again, that silver lining of some things that we've talked about for a long time and being able to see how we can be most efficient. So I think it's well needed and appreciate the emphasis on it.
Yeah, and I would, the conversations we have, I'd want to include obviously the committee chairs as well, the ones that are down on the ground dealing with policy with these departments, so that we can make sure that we have that perspective as well.
Other comments? So Ryan, what would you recommend is the next step? Now you've got the list here, you explained the process. So what would be the next step in this?
I think the immediate next step is Supervisor Diamond had his hand up.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry. Mr. Diamond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points I want to make. During this process, do you think it makes sense to not only look at this internally, which we are, and I kind of like the fact that we are going to start looking at it. And the point being is, and I want to be very clear that if there was any any changes that would occur, it would be based on attrition. My position is not to lay off people, but there may be, ways to unify our departments and improve our efficiencies without letting people go. I like that idea. I like that approach. Secondly, I know that maybe we thought passively looking at this externally out of the county itself and reaching out to the town of Queensbury and other small towns, the city of Glens Falls, because we really have had a success story with the purchasing department, which we undertook several years back. And I know at that point in time, the governor had monies in his budget that would incentivize people looking at and possibly doing shared services initiatives. I don't know if the money is in the current budget. That would be a question for Ryan, but I do think that there's opportunities here with in mind that we are not going to lay people off, but we are going to try to effectively improve our efficiencies.
Ryan, did you want to address that?
Yeah, in terms of going beyond just the county and working with the localities, I think that's an excellent idea. It's something that we've tried in the past shared services panels that we've had, but these are different times. And, in normal times, sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and now maybe it is. So I guess the best thing that we could do from the perspective of working with Glens Falls is maybe we get all 5 of the ward supervisors or a subset of those supervisors who want to be involved. Maybe we can, the same way that we're getting the departments together to have these individual conversations, maybe we'll get the Glens Falls supervisors together with the mayor and whoever else the mayor wants to be part of that conversation, and we can talk about that too. You got a former mayor that's among those 5 that I think it sounds like he would jump on board with that. Same thing for Queensbury. We got 5 Queensbury supervisors. We could figure out whether all of them or whether a subset of them wants to be having those conversations with the town. Those are probably the 2 major opportunities for shared services, but that doesn't mean there's not something for the smaller towns as well. So we could take a look at that too.
Other discussion on that. That's a great point, Jack, you brought up, and thanks, Ryan. Including Glens Falls, Queensbury, and any other town that would like to be included. But obviously, there could be some savings by having the county maybe take on some additional responsibilities that currently Queensbury does by themselves or Glens Falls does by themselves. That has additional costs. Yeah. So what does the committee want to do? Do they want to form a subcommittee on with Glens Falls and Queensbury and any other town who'd like to be part of that is more than welcome, obviously. But obviously, Glens Falls and Queensbury constitute, from a financial point, the vast majority of the county. But so that would be probably the biggest savings there. But definitely not excluding any of the other towns. Any thoughts on that, Matt? What do you think, Matt Simpson? Oh, you got to unmute, Matt. You got to unmute.
I think that's a good plan. I'm okay. I'm good with that.
Okay. Rachel?
I think anytime you can look at that type of consolidation and if it makes sense, we've talked for a long time about different HR functions, tourism functions. I wrote down a list of things that I recall just briefly, talking about in the past. And I think looking at it, breaking it down by locality is smart, but I also think you got to have that cross-reference between Glens Falls and Queensbury on the board as well. So maybe mixing up some of those subgroups if we're really looking at those 2 bigger localities, and then making sure that we do have representation from up north in that discussion without hitting that area of a quorum, but having those working groups, because I do think there's ways to also enhance services and cut expenses as a whole by having that type of balance. So maybe some more discussion or planning as it relates to those working groups, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. So I think the next step, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. Ben, did you have a,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything solid at this moment, but we can always take a look at some of the area not-for-profits that are currently have MOUs and contractual agreements with the county to provide certain types of services, sometimes seasonal services. So, I mean, keep those types of organizations in mind. Again, I don't have anything specific to add this morning, but keep those in mind as far as delivery of services and saving on personnel cost from the county's perspective. So, thanks.
okay. I think, Rachel, go ahead.
Just one more quick thought too. I know Tammy was working with Ryan on a list of contracts that the county has. Maybe this is a good opportunity to see too if we're contributing in some areas that the towns in the city are also contributing, or vice versa, to look at a reduction, or where are we contributing that perhaps might look like we're paying for the same things. I don't know. I know in the past we've looked at some of these contracts as a whole, and maybe taking a look at that in terms of saving money. If in fact Kevin Garrity gets to that point and says, listen, we've got to find more to cut in the idea of shared services, that might be an area with those contracts as well.
Okay. Julie Butler did a phenomenal job in the last couple of years with purchasing, getting the different towns to work together so that when we did send out a bid, obviously we had X amount of towns saying, I need this for this product and this quantity and so forth. And she managed her department to save hundreds of thousands of dollars for not only the towns, but the county too. That was a phenomenal job she did. And obviously we now probably need to take this to even a higher level. So I think the committee's okay with forming a couple subgroups, or at least one subgroup that has Glens Falls, a few Glens Falls ward supervisors, maybe a few Queensbury ward supervisors, or town at-large supervisors, and some up-county people. Maybe Edna would want to be on that, and to see if there is some opportunity for consolidation or savings of money, whether the county takes it on or whatever. So I think what I'll do is, if this committee's fine with it, I'll work with Ryan and we'll put together what we suggest would be a subgroup of different supervisors to see, to have their input directly towards a possible savings from their towns with the county. Is that correct, Ryan? Would you feel good with that?
Yeah. We could do it that way, or we could do, a Glens Falls group, a Queensbury group, and then I can have, if any town supervisors in the other towns want us to form up a group for their town, and maybe they can come up with local people. Maybe that's a better way to do it.
Okay, so we'll have an individual Glens Falls, individual Queensbury, and up county if they'd like to. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send out emails to the 5 supervisors in both of those larger municipalities, and we'll see who wants to volunteer for it.
Excellent. Any comments from anyone? Yes, Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I suggest is that we collect some data before we form a committee and find out where we have common ground within the city of Glens Falls, the town of Queensbury, and some of the up county towns. And then at that point in time where we can find some commonality, we can then look at what types of committees could be formed to have that discussion. Keeping in mind that, this is something that the governor's pushed for many years. And I think it's time to do this exercise. I'm not saying that this is going to occur. What's going to happen, I can't predict that, but I think because we're going into coming out of this pandemic crisis, that business is going to change.
Okay, I concur. Ryan, did you want to say something?
I agree. We'll have those preliminary conversations, and that'll be part of the data gathering. If it makes sense to do something that involves multiple towns, towns. If there's commonality where, you know, we see universally there's an opportunity to merge highway services, for instance. I don't know, but maybe we'll see what we find out. The other piece is the county attorney's office and probably the county treasurer's office has a seat at the table for all of this stuff, just to make sure that what we're doing is legal. It's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's always a good thing to make sure it's legal. Any other comments? Mr. Conover?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just more to Ryan, I think, than anyone that, you know, the challenge with a lot of the small departments, as you know, Ryan, is that people are on vacation, they take personal time, they get sick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that I know you're looking at is that the opportunity to do little cross training so that those types of bumps in the road, whenever they exist, are smoothed out, so to speak. And so I just want to reinforce maybe some of your comments regarding what happens in the smaller cities. Or conversely, what ends up happening is you end up hiring somebody part-time or full-time to try to smoothie that out when maybe there's a more efficient way to do it. Now, one size doesn't fit all, so I'm not going to suggest that all small departments should be eliminated, but I think that there is administrative merit to looking at that and from an administrative point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conover. Okay, at this point then, I'm going to open this up to the privilege of the floor. Don, are there any pertinent questions for this committee?
Supervisor Beatty, as of now, there's nothing posted on the YouTube feed or via email or Facebook.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Chairman,
So,
Mr. Diamond has comments, and I believe Mr. Wild does as well.
okay, we'll go with Mr. Diamond first. He's on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not my intentions, Ryan, to burden you with more responsibility. I think that we as a committee can collect a lot of this data. We can have the data sent directly to the chairman, and from there we can work off the data that comes back to the county, because I know you've got a lot of things on your plate at this point in time, and we can do an analysis internally about where we want to have these discussions, if that's okay with my colleagues on this committee.
That's fine with me. Mr. Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to address the committee. As you all know, most of my experience is in the private sector and big business. And fortunately or unfortunately, I've had the opportunity to live through some economic downturns. And it's more of a question and a comment for everyone to consider. But from a big business standpoint, whenever there were times like this, there were austerity budgets that were developed. Everybody had to cut 20, 25%, 15%, whatever it might be. And you had to justify spending any more than that because of some essential activity that needed to be done. So my suggestion is that we go forward with our austerity budget. And if there's anything addition that needs to be added to it, it needs to be justified from a priority standpoint, be it public safety or some other kind of metric that we use to add. And from a big business standpoint, because of the economic downturn, it took years and years and years and years to rebuild back your budgets to be able to do what you were doing prior to that. And it's just a thought for everyone to consider. Let's move forward with the austerity budget, challenge our people to do everything they need to do with that budget, and maybe actually give them another 10% cut. And let's see who the creative ones are going to stand up and make things happen and reward them for that kind of work. But just my thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. Any other comments from any other supervisors, or I'll open it up to the privilege of the floor. Okay, so this was a good meeting. It's a good solid start. Some great input from Mr. Wild, from Mr. Diamond, Rachel. I think we know where we can now start heading. That will be a subgroup with Queensbury, Glens Falls, and hopefully some up-county people. And also, it'll give time for all the members to look over that list again that Mr. Moore put out, and maybe have some more input on that. I know it was only sent out last week, so it was short notice. We're going to be meeting monthly, and this is going to be a real concerted effort, I think, by shared services and all supervisors to really get the maximum benefit out of every dollar for our taxpayers. So this is going to be a high priority. So if I don't see any other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to adjourn?
I'll move it.
Okay, Mr. Diamond,
Second.
second by Edna. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
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 Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending.